Hey YouTube, this is Trynet here. I just got back from Toronto. I finished 4th place, losing to Billy Break in top 4 and then Alex in the 3rd, 4th playoff. I ran TGs again. I felt comfortable with this deck and the other stuff I was testing didn't really work out, so I settled with this. And I feel it worked very well. In the main deck there were 3 Rush Rhinos, 3 Warwolf, 3 Striker, 3 Tengu, 2 Barbaros, Dark Hole, Reborn, Book, Dualities, Horn of the Phantom Beast, Skill Drain, Calls, Bottomlesses, Warnings, EM1s, Deep Prison, Mirror Force, Starlights, Bribe, Torrential, Solemn Judgment. In the side deck, there are 2 Liberty at Last, 2 Chain Disappearance, 1 Transmigration Prophecy, Dimensional Prison, Mind Crush, Trap Dustshoot, DD Crow, Closed Forest, 3 MSTs, and Breaker the Magical Warrior. For the extra deck, there's Orient Dragon, Scrap Archfiend, Scrap Dragon, Allied Justice Cadister, Stardust Dragon, Wonder Magician, Black Rose, Trishula, and the Cherry Barkion, Gaia Knight, Brio, Utopia, Gachi, and Leviathan Dragon. Again, I don't think I made Wonder Magician the entire event. I still don't think I've made Wonder Magician in a tournament game ever. I think the only guys I made were this guy, these guys, this guy, and these guys. Might make Cadister once. So these are the really important ones to play. And then you want to be playing stuff like Utopia, Gachi, and Leviathan just so you have the options available. But really, it's not as important as the main 7 synchros you make. One thing that was strange in the sideboard, on the 9-hour car ride, it was up to Toronto. I was thinking of different ways to beat the Venus Gachi turn 1. It's so devastating against decks like this, because usually you have to waste cards in order to get rid of the Gachi. The way I figured out to get around this was to play 2 Liberty at Last in the sideboard. Liberty at Last was one of my favorite cards versus Agents throughout the entire event. I was so happy I found out about this card, and sadly I only have one left as I had to borrow one from a friend. What it does is when your opponent destroys one of your monsters by battle, you pick 2 cards on their side of the field, 2 monsters on their side of the field, and they go back to their deck. So this means they go turn 1, Venus Gachi, attack over your set Warwolf. Warwolf dies, Liberty at Last, Venus goes back to deck so they don't get Hyperion summons, and Gachi goes back to the extra deck, the Shine Balls go to the grave so the Venuses are dead still. And then you get End Phase Warwolf Search. So you really didn't lose any cards, and you defeated their entire setup with 1 card. It's also good if they go, like, Hyperion plus an Agent, you can send them both back to deck, because they won't waste their Hyperion pops on stuff like Rush Rhino or Warwolf or Striker. You can just wait for them to attack and then Liberty at Last everything back to their deck. Trap Dustshoot, I said I was going to side this card every time I went first, but after the first 2 times I sided it in, I never drew it live. I decided to never side it in for the rest of the event. And I didn't side it in for the rest of the event until my 3rd, 4th playoff match versus Alex. I'm sorry, I forget your last name. He's loaded dice on Duelist Grounds. I sided in Trap Dustshoot and just didn't draw it. So the main board, most of this is very standard. There's the standard 9 TG monsters, the standard Tengus, the 2 Barbaros that are standard in a skill drain build. I'm not playing Mind Control or Pot of Avarice. Mind Control I just felt was dead too often, and Pot of Avarice I have to wait into the late game, which by the late game I should already have a very strong grasp on the game. I don't really need cards like Avarice, which just weigh me down early on. The 3 Horn of the Phantom Beast. I considered going down to 2 and playing a 2nd Dimensional Prison or maybe a 2nd Dark Bribe, but I decided the 3rd Horn of the Phantom Beast, despite all its shortcomings versus Agents, was much better versus every other deck. I ended up siding them 2 or 3 out versus Agents every time I played against them because I sided so many cards in for Agents. Skill Drain is just a really solid card right now. You can stop the turn 1 Earth Search, you can stop the Venus plays. It makes Tragodia 0 attack, which is huge. It stops Gores from getting a token, which is huge. Like generic stuff. It's not even just because it beats other decks. It's because it stops things like Tragodia, while also making Barbaros huge. Call of the Haunted. It's good because MST is being played everywhere. People are just going to blind MST you because you're playing TGs. Don't ask. They hope they can hit the Starlight Road, and instead they Call of the Haunted, you chain Call of the Haunted, get back a TG monster, and face search, or Call of the Haunted, get back a Tengu that was warning, to then get your other Tengu. Or in some cases, like I think in one of my feature matches, I called the Haunted in response to an attack by, I think, a Cyber Dragon to get back Beastking Barbaros. Now, sadly, my opponent here decided to continue his attack because he didn't realize Barbaros was 3,000. So yeah, it brings back Barbaros to 3,000 attack, which is also very important. It also lets you play around the kind of things like they go warning on a TG summon to stop you from searching. You can just call the Haunted back to TG monster and it's like nothing happened. It's just a really solid card. I could not imagine playing the deck without both copies. I regretted not playing the card at Nationals, and I'm so happy I played it for Toronto. It was amazing all day long. The two Bottomless Trapples. I like Bottomless Trapple versus Agents. You Bottomless the Venus, so you lock down the Hyperions. You Bottomless the Christia, so it doesn't go back to top of deck. You Bottomless the... the Hyperion, I guess, but you don't... It's not ideal. You can Bottomless the Leviathan Dragon drops, you can Bottomless the Liviere drops. Overall, it's just a solid card that protects your setups and allows you to be more aggro than normal. It also Bottomless Thunder King, Bottomless Kaiko, Bottomless all that stuff that people side in for you. Two Solemn Warnings. The two TG EM1s were... I thought they would be better going into the event versus fairies than they were. Most of the time I was forced to end up using them on like gachis and crap because I couldn't get rid of gachi. I thought ideally I'd be able to take Hyperions and Christias, which is free wins. I think I took a Christia only once the entire tournament. I took Gores twice. I took a Gores token once. Overall, I don't think I could possibly cut it. It just wasn't as good as I thought it was. I sided it out versus Plants like I did last format. I don't know if that was the right choice, though, because Leviathan Dragon is still a good card to steal. Like, EM1's a really good card. It's just a little situational at times because you have to have the TG monster, and you have to have the TG monster that you're willing to give to your opponent for a turn if you can't immediately kill it. And there's the risk of Dimensional Prison, letting them keep the TG monster, and there's a lot of risks with it. The one Dimensional Prison, I was looking for filler, to be honest, and it was just a really good card to fill space with. The deck count is 40, so I didn't want to play 39, obviously. And I didn't want to main deck MST or something else that would not really lead to Monster Zone control. The Dimensional Prison hit Venuses, it hit Sangin a couple times, which is devastating. It's just overall a really solid card that's good in some way versus every deck. Mirror Force, two Starlight Roads because Heavy Storm exists, the one Dark Bribe because Heavy Storm exists. I don't think I won more than one game anytime I played Dark Bribe. I usually lose when I activate Dark Bribe. I'm probably going to end up cutting it. I'm not sure for what, though. Dark Bribe was nice because it let me have the security from Heavy Storm, so I never felt like I was going to lose because he had the Storm. I liked having those 4 outs to Heavy Storm, which was the 2 Starlights, the Judgment, and the Dark Bribe. It just let me be really aggressive turn 1 by just setting everything, summoning a Tengu, or setting a Rush Rhino, or setting a Warwolf, or setting a Striker, and just pass feeling completely safe turn 1 that they can't do anything to hurt me. Torrential Solemn Judgment. That's mostly it. Some of the interesting plays that I liked were, like, decks like Plants will often go turn 1, Tengu, set a back row. Oftentimes you can mimic this game 1, so your opponent thinks you're playing Plants. So if I go turn 1, summon Tengu, set Horn of the Phantom Beast, they don't know I'm playing TGs yet. So if they go summon Tengu, I auto win, because they ram the Tengus, I Horn of the Phantom Beast, draw 1 card, they search another Tengu, which is just fodder for the Horn, and it's an easy win from there. Sometimes they'll go Tour Guide, make Leviathan Dragon, pump to 25, and then attack the Tengu. I can still Horn of the Phantom Beast, clear the Leviathan Dragon, and then search a Tengu, and be extremely safe by having 2 Tengus in deck, and I lost 1 card for the Tour Guide, so it's a 1-for-1 trade. Plants don't really have a good answer, unless they have the MST, which they often don't want to play blind on turn 1. So even if I had the Starlight Road, I would often just set Horn of the Phantom Beast, set Tengu, pass. Or sometimes just set Horn of the Phantom Beast, set Starlight Road, pass, even if I had like 3 more back row in hand or 2 more back row in hand. It's just such a solid turn 1 because of how it catches people off guard. Into the side deck, going back to explain some of these choices a little bit more. The two Mind Crushes were good, like in the mirror match, which I didn't really play much of, and it was good versus E-Hero decks that played emergency calls. I didn't really play much of either deck. It ended up being solid, but I don't think I played it more than 1 or 2 times the entire tournament. I drew it in the feature match and it got stormed, and yeah, it was solid, but I think I guess it belongs in the sideboard, especially if TG picks up as a deck, because it's devastating versus TG. They go set striker, hoping that sure that it'll go through. You attack over the striker, they search a Rhino, and then you Mind Crush, and suddenly they have 2 Rhinos in hand, and they lose both Rhinos, and they're screwed because now they have no TG monsters left, and the game's basically over because they're out of monsters unless they have Call of the Haunted. Closed Forest was for Gravekeepers. I didn't play any Gravekeepers. I wasn't really worried about the Gravekeeper matchup. Wait, I think it's a lie. I played one Gravekeeper deck, and I think I 2-0'd it. I really gotta think. It's been a long week, and I gotta type up a tournament report and all that. I'm doing this now, like 6 hours after I got home. Oh, I guess it's 12 hours now. I got home at 6 a.m., so 6 o'clock. Yeah. 3 Mystical Space Typhoon and the 1 Breaker went in versus every deck that I was suspicious might side Decree potentially. I was not willing to lose to Decree ever. While the main deck 1 of Decree was somewhat manageable by Striker, Warwolf, Make Wonder Magician, which never ended up happening, the side deck triple Decree was really scary for me, and those MSTs won me multiple games by just hitting Decree on the chain. Decree is just so scary for this kind of deck, and in top 32 versus Joe Girolando, I was sure that he wasn't really siding Decrees, but I didn't want to take the risk even though that he didn't play many back row. Like, after game 1, I realized he didn't side... after game 2, I was pretty sure he didn't side in Decrees, but I kept the Breaker and 3 MST sided in anyway, because I was not willing to take the risk of losing game 3 to Decree. It's just such a devastating card when you're playing 20 traps in the main deck. And while he didn't play many back row, it's not like MST was ever bad, because he still did play, I believe, Warning, Judgment, and 1 or 2 other back row. I don't know his deck list by heart. Transmigration Prophecy was versus Plants. It's cool because they go like Pot of Avarice or try to bring back Spore or Glow Bulb, and then you get both that out of there, and then you send a Tengu back into your deck, or a TG monster that you want to search later back into deck. It's just multi-purpose DD Crow. I also side the 1 DD Crow because I'm only allowed 1 Transmigration Prophecy, and the DD Crow is... it's solid, but I don't think I ever used it. But then I don't think I ever used Transmigration Prophecy either, so... yeah, the Chain Disappearance went in versus Agents, so I kind of regret putting it in versus Agents. I think I'd only put 1 in versus Agents and 2 in versus Plants. If that... it was a really last-minute decision. I put the Chain Disappearances in 5 minutes before I handed in my deck list, because I didn't want to put Max C in. Just because I'm not a huge fan of the card. It was either two Chain Disappearance or 2 Max C, and I didn't want to spend $40 for 2 Max C, so I spent $16 for 2 Chain Disappearance. That's the whole logic behind it. I think I used it once the entire tournament on a Kagamusha, which had an asceticism change to it, so we got another Kagamusha out anyway. But it wasn't bad. It was just subpar. It could have been better. It could have been worse. Could have been... Dimensional Prison... I sided in for the first half of the event versus Agents because I figured the second Dimensional Prison was better than the second Liberty at Last. I didn't really think out my sideboard very well before the tournament, so I wasn't sure exactly what I sided in and out versus Agents, which is a huge mistake on my part. I should have known exactly what was going in and out versus a popular deck like Agents, but I didn't. So I opted to side in the 1 Dimensional Prison, 1 Liberty, 2 Chain Disappearance, 3 MST, and a Breaker in versus Agents for the first half of the tournament. Then I think after round 8, I started siding in both Liberties and keeping the Dimensional Prison in the side deck because Liberty was just being so good for me the entire tournament. Every time I drew Liberty versus Agents, it turned into a complete blowout where I just sent back everything and managed to win a very quick early game. Yeah, this has been 15 minutes. It's really just a TG deck. Nothing special, just figured I'd post this, and see you later, YouTube.